As I said, we have a great representative of NVIDIA today, Rory Kelleher. He's Senior Director and Global Head of Business Development in the Healthcare and Life Sciences at NVIDIA. We're going to talk about the compute behind the breakthrough. Please welcome Rory Kelleher. Rory, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. I'll tell you what, we're lucky to have Alicia at the helm of ARPA-H.
Do you work with her at all?
We work with many of her program managers, and yeah, it's been great to get to know her a little bit.
If I were running Dart, Stephen Winchell's a great guy, but some of these other places, I'd be worried if because she's going to outrun them all, is my, friendly comment on that. But not that it's competition. But look, for those of you who don't know, last night, Tammy Haddad and the Washington AI Network had a phenomenal awards evening that I could not go to because we were hosting a separate dinner. I always have a dinner going on. But I love Tammy Haddad. I love the network. And one of the people they honored last night was Chris Malachowski, who is a co-founder of NVIDIA. And I've spent a little time with Chris, and he's the guy who invented the GPU. And he's as modest you could ever imagine. He and his wife call themselves the hillbillies of Palo Alto. They're super cool people. But what's interesting is when you look at technology that's truly changed the world, you guys are in the middle of it right now in the kind of high stakes geostrategic race around AI, about power, about the stack in the AI space, which Jensen Huang has talked about. And so I basically think what's wonderful about having you here is that AI technology is affecting everything we care about. And so in the health space, what are you doing to be transformative and break through the silo here that we ought to be knowing about?
Yeah, thanks for the question. There's a lot of people are like, wait, NVIDIA does healthcare? I thought you guys were a chip company. And while that is very much the case, we do make GPUs. Those GPUs make their way into systems. These systems make their way into large data centers, or what we call AI factories. But we actually build a lot of software at NVIDIA, both software for developers that is kind of like horizontal, but also domain-specific software and specific verticals that we choose to go to market in, whether it be autonomous vehicles or robotics, or in this case, healthcare. We're building tools to put into the hands of developers that are actually building solutions for healthcare across imaging, genomics, drug discovery, and so on. And so there's three big areas that we focus on from a healthcare go-to-market standpoint. First is what we call digital devices. So if you think about a Tesla car, what makes that car interesting is not that they've built a better electric engine than anyone, but they've made the car programmable and AI defined, right? And so we're trying to do the same with all the diagnostic imaging providers and genomic sequencers and robotic surgery platforms out there by building tools, libraries, software models, et cetera, that make it easier for them to do so. The second area is an area that is near and dear to my heart. It's where I spend a vast majority of my time, is in digital biology, or you can think about the technologies that can be used to discover and develop drugs and get them to patients more quickly. Anything from artificial intelligence for target identification, to designing molecules, to innovating on clinical trials like we just heard Alicia talking about. And then the final area is really at the point of care, digital health. And so we heard from Dr. Frederick and from Congressman earlier talking about how there's incredible opportunity for ambient technology actually in the exam room. And so we're working with companies like Open Evidence. Think of this as like the modern day Google for a clinician that is helping them operate at the top of their license, because it gives them real-time accessibility to all the medical journal publications that are taking place where they can use in practice with their patients. Or another example is a company like Abridge, which is an ambient technology that actually runs on the cell phone. And instead of having a physician experience where you're talking to them, but they're just focused on entering the information into the record, they can actually sit across from you. They can have a real conversation with you. You feel like you're being heard and you're actually getting care delivered. And they're saving 4 to 6 hours of pajama time when after work they would have to enter that into the electronic health record themselves.
So you're so far more advanced than I am in your understanding of how these pieces fit together. I've always been interested in
that's probably not true.
GPUs and where do they fit with TSMC making chips, where do they fit with ASML and lithography. I don't really need to know all that, but I know that it's all complex. And then on top of that, you have these LLMs and these big platforms that are basically absorbing and sucking up all knowledge to kind of figure out, okay, we're going to do this. But my sense is the expectation of the layperson out there that is positive about this is that somehow those models that you power, that you provide the processing speed and excellence for, are going to somehow see things that our medical establishment hasn't yet seen. Innovations, discoveries, cancer cures. You heard Alicia talk about this. Is that really happening, or are people kind of BSing right now?
No, I mean, it's absolutely happening. We talk about AI being a 5-layer cake. At the very bottom layer, there's energy, then there's infrastructure, which is where NVIDIA plays. Then there are models. This is where everyone thinks artificial intelligence is. This is what we're hearing from Anthropic and ChatGPT and others. But really, what we're focused on is the application area. The application of artificial intelligence is far more than just chatbots and TikToks. There's incredible applications in healthcare where we're aggregating, not we, NVIDIA, but the ecosystem partners, the actual solution providers are aggregating a bunch of electronic health record data, multimodal data. I'll give you a quick example of some work that we've done with Mayo Clinic. We did some AI work with them where they did a retrospective study on 2,000 abdominal CTs that eventually were predicted or were found to have pancreatic cancer. And so we went back in time, we ran these studies through an AI model, and we were able to identify at twice the rate of humans early indications of pancreatic cancer 16 months before human physicians were ever able to do it before. And throughout the conversation earlier today, we talked about wanting to move not just healthcare, but proactive healthcare. This is the opportunity to.
Why isn't that deployed more? I remember 15 years ago, Intel of all things had a rug, wired in such a way that it could identify if you were likely to have a stroke, believe it or not, the way you walked or something. Or, Dave Schweikert was up here talking about a ring he was wearing and being able to identify certain impulses that might lead. I see this stuff percolating out there, but it still feels very boutique-y to me. What's preempting something just along the lines you said of technology helping to kind of create a culture of early detection, earlier screening? We did this with breast cancer, but we seem to be lagging in a lot of other areas.
Yeah, it's a fair question. We have come a long way from where we were just, call it 5 years ago. Today, 1 in every 7 studies has a second pair of eyes, which is artificial intelligence, looking after it in terms of CT, PET, MR, X-ray, et cetera. So that's 75 million studies a year, which is good, but there's still a lot more that we have to do. I think part of it is awareness, making sure that remote clinics also are aware of what Mayo Clinic is building or what is available to them through the commercial ecosystem of software providers. I think part of it is incentives. Hospitals operate at razor-thin margins already today, and so we need to, as an ecosystem, kind of articulate the financial benefits and also make sure that the reimbursement is there for these tools. And so, in my sense, the technology is moving so fast, the capabilities are incredible, the opportunity and the potential is massive. And really, the dissemination of this technology is where we collectively have to work on together as an ecosystem.
So in my notes here, it says that that Roche is deploying over 3,500 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs across cloud, on-premises systems in the US and Europe, creating a large-scale AI infrastructure to support drug discovery, diagnostics, manufacturing, and research across the company. Love to hear about that, but I'm more interested in does all industry now in the drug discovery have to do that to stay ahead? And are you the standard in that? And I'm interested is how even or uneven now is that drug discovery field, and how critical are your GPUs to that process?
Yeah, thank you. I think we're seeing now that pharmaceutical companies recognize, and healthcare companies broadly, recognize that they have to start operating like technology companies. They really do. And I think they realize this because they see the trend lines, the capabilities of these tools, and believe, as we do, that we are on the cusp of a new era of discovery. And so let me just talk to you about the 3 areas that we're seeing this innovation come together and that is going to drive this new era. First is foundation models trained not on just natural language, but trained on the languages of chemistry and biology. So these are biology foundation models that can improve the design of molecules to have the desired characteristics that are likely to treat the disease and get through clinical trials. That's 1, biofoundation models. 2 is everything we've seen take place in agentic AI over the past, call it 8 or 9 months. The world has changed as of 8 or 9 months ago with long-running agents like OpenClaw. And when you think about what agents can do, they can turn an LLM into what is, in effect, a useful tool. AI has become useful because of agents. Agents can reason, they can use tools, they can have memory, they can do goal-objective tasks.
They can make flight reservations.
Thank goodness for that.
Do that, yeah.
Thank goodness for that. And they can call these biofoundation model tools. And so you start to have an interplay between agents and foundation models. Finally, this has to actually work in the real world. And so you need a lab that is going to both generate the data and validate the data. And this lab increasingly is becoming robotically programmed. And so you have this continuous feedback loop, if you will, where there's low latency feedback coming from the experiment world, going into the models that are hypothesizing on what the next experiment should be to run. And you see this really low feedback loop, fast feedback loop that's happening in discovery. And so what's happening is the pharmaceutical industry is recognizing that compute is now a strategic asset. It is the new instrument of science. Just like they were outfitting their scientists with microscopes many years ago, and now microscopes half the size of this room today, they're now investing in computational.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, some of the folks in the audience are at medical centers, hospitals, which have huge stranded costs in them, by the way. I feel badly. I mean, honestly, folks, I feel badly for hospitals sometimes because they have a whole cost structure which is very different than a lot of what we're talking about. But years ago, I was talking to them about health records, and my information may be very out of date. So let me put that on the table. But at the Aspen Health Forum years ago, I moderated something for Ruth Katz there on medical health records and on the Byzantine, balkanized, broken up world of medical health records. And oh my God, I heard more swearing at a dinner among really respectable, nice healthcare, doctors and all, health system who hated the dominant monopoly. I won't even mention the name of the healthcare records. And then there was also other stuff back there 10 years ago, particularly in cancer research, where medical systems they would say it was HIPAA that was preventing the sharing of a lot of the data that they had. But a lot of people thought they were doing it for commercial reasons, that they saw the commercial value of that much data, and thus the sharing was not as great as it might have been. I don't know if that has changed, or has the data healthcare ecosystem commons gotten better? Because if it hasn't, isn't that a barrier to moving forward on health? Do you know the answer?
I think there's been some improvement.
Some improvement.
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't think there's been improvement? Okay, you don't think. Okay, bring a mic up here. Yeah, just real quick. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just give a few examples. There are companies like Truveta and Enference and Tempus who are finding an economic model that works, where you can aggregate the data and you can also provide health insights both to providers and to pharmaceutical companies so that they can build better medicines. So that is a trend, if you will, that has emerged, call it over the past decade or so.
Right.
There's also technology solutions.
And so that can swim along with privacy protections just fine?
Absolutely, and this is where I want to get to. Many of these organizations are de-identifying the data in the first place.
I see.
But there are also technology solutions such as federated learning, which allows organizations to aggregate the learnings of that data without actually sharing the data itself. So it's a privacy-preserving manner of sharing data.
Do we have? So I want to get your take on it because I'm really interested in this. So you still see it as a problem?
Yes.
And tell everybody who you are. You're a wonderful person.
Claire Hast, HerTech, Clinical AI Strategy. And I have to go back because now I was engrossed in your next comment. As far as the EHR from a clinical perspective, as things have not improved, and I won't name the big elephant in the room because I've dealt with all of them. The issue that I have with ER data being used to train foundational models or even inform tools is that the old statistical adage of garbage in, garbage out. And the EHR, especially when it comes to acute care, there's a lot of inaccuracies, not accurate to time. I don't want to go as far as to say fraudulent, but yeah. And if we're building models based on the incentive to document so you can get paid, that is not
Right.
actually going to reflect care. So everything is going to be skewed that way, and that's my concern.
Smart comment. Your thought?
Yeah, listen, this is why I'm so excited about the ambient technology space, is because by using voice agents and in some cases video within the exam room, like a lot of the issues that you're describing probably go away because there is no human cleansing of data or human bias that goes in from the conversation to whatever the physician enters in.
Right.
It is actual raw data that is going to be used to help avoid some of the fraudulent activities and actually make sure that the healthcare that was described was delivered will be delivered. And so I think that is going to be a much more rich data set that could enable foundation model training that could lead to better outcomes.
So just really quick, because we're out of time, but since you sit in rooms with Chris Malachowski and Jensen Huang, and you're like part of that new cool secret society of like visionaries, what's the next big thing they're going to do? What's the next moonshot?
I spend a lot of my time on the healthcare and life sciences space. There's a bunch of really interesting initiatives within NVIDIA, anything from climate prediction to what we're doing in digital biology space. I'll talk about what we're excited about, and it kind of dovetails from Alicia's final comments too. When I speak to leaders of R&D in pharma, they say, I have 80% of my AI use cases deployed in early discovery, but 90% of my time and money is spent on clinical development. And so that to me is the challenge that we actually need to go figure out together is, and this comes back to the conversation we were just having around patient foundation models, assuming that the inputs are good, right? And that is an assumption. But there also is like raw data, like whether it be omics data or imaging data that is not just, electronic health record data. We can use that to be able to build foundation models that can predict who is likely to respond to a particular therapy a priori, which will inform how we design trials and recruit patients, which will ultimately lead to, we believe, better success, drive down the time and cost it takes to bring medicines to market.
Well, look,
So
I
that's
really
an
want to
exciting
thank you,
space.
and I'm going to, just credit, a lot of your tech team here in Washington. I know Eric Breckenfeld and Meg King and Ruth Berry and these people. And we've had Eric on stage before. He's kind of a scary guy because he can talk about this stuff in such a sophisticated way. And he left us with this word. He said, we're all talking about large language models and thinking these things are all operating in English or Chinese or Japanese or French or whatever. But he said, the big system, data is talking to data. It doesn't actually need, it is, the data is the language, which is kind of another way to think about, when you get into what that's going to mean in the healthcare space, that's got to be another strategic leap in there somewhere. So let's give a big round of applause to Rory Kelleher, Senior Director, Global Head of Business Development in Healthcare at Gilead, or not Gilead, NVIDIA, excuse me. Yeah. Thank you very much, Rory, appreciate it.